This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamill.
I'm somewhat more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff. Hey everyone, welcome to the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Today I'm excited about our guest, Daniel Dorfman from the Roots investment community. He's based out of Atlanta. He's doing some fantastic things down there. Daniel, thank you for being on the show. Please give us a bit of your real estate background.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Bill. Excited to kind of talk with you guys today. And my real estate background is I've essentially been working in real estate in tangent with my regular career for 13 years. And I took that 13 years ago, bought our first investment home and have been collecting real estate in a single family portfolio ever since with my wife. And in 2017, we had our first kid, and I was at a startup at the time and just working 100 hours a week and not really making as big an impact on our lives or on anybody else's lives as I wanted to. And we had our first kid, and we looked at each other and said, "Hey, let's do something together." And at that point, we started Roots Atlanta, which is our kind of retail arm. A team of agents. We have a small team here in Atlanta of 11 agents, sell about 150 homes in that vertical. And through that process, I continually loved the idea of the investment play and of not just killing what you eat, but continuing to build that passive income stream for us and for others. And ended up doing a ton of syndicated deals where we would lead and buy small multifamilies here in Atlanta. And that kind of all culminated into what is now the Roots Investment Community, which is a privately held REIT here in Atlanta with the objective and mission to help anybody and everyone be able to invest in real estate for as little as $100.
Yeah, that is, I found that extremely interesting, how you have all of the tenants invested in their apartments. Explain that a little bit more, and how does that intertwine with something like a private REIT?
Yeah, so, correct me if I'm wrong, but we think we have invented the first own while you rent program through and own while you rent REIT for sure. And so this model was created because we really like the single family space. We like that asset. We know it really well. And when we looked at our data from years of doing this, we recognized that location is super important. But the people who live in your homes are who really determine the profits. And they, people who pay on time, people who stay, people who don't, wreck the place on the way out, that creates the great positive cash flow that we all want. And so the idea was, all right, well, why don't we invite them to the party and give them a seat at the table and an opportunity to partner with us. And you take care of the property. We give you a little bit more in wealth to build up and incentivize you to kind of be a good partner in that place. So, that's kind of how it branched together and created what is today our Living It Like You Own It program.
No, I can see the incentive for tenants to want to build wealth as they live somewhere. The thought that I have, I've been an investor for quite some time and a hands-on manager for a very, very long time, and had great luck with residents. But, there's always that small percentage that you get fixated on and can create that weekly strife, I guess you can say. Have you seen these residents who have this ability to benefit living in your community, have you seen a major improvement as far as tenants that don't create the angst that some may?
So what I'll say is there's always going to be that resident, right? That percentage of people is going to be there, right? And but what we have seen is since we've been in, we're still young in this model, and we're 18 months down the line now. In that 18 months, we've got 110 doors, and 78% of them have gotten their full incentive package, which means that they all have paid rent on time. They've all done the short video that we asked them to do, and they've all been good neighbors, which basically means don't have the police called or anything like that. And so of those residents, it's been a terrific experience compared to my other portfolio where I'm not running this program, where we've seen you're kind of always on the back burner, is what I've seen, right? The people aren't proactively calling you when there's a small leak. They're not proactively calling you when they see a little bit of like mold spot or something like that, which, as we all know, creates big problems down the line, right? You move somebody in, you go 3 years later, and you've never seen the inside of the building, and all of a sudden you've got all these issues at the turn. And so our video in this program has helped us kind of eliminate that, do some preventative maintenance. And then as far as the people who I'm going to say probably would always have an issue, we kind of have been able to, yes, identify that and identify people that we do not want to renew, which you would do anyway. And through our program, we're getting amazing referrals of people who want to live in the buildings, who want to have a chance to grow their wealth while they live with us. And we haven't even really been having to list our rentals when they come up. So that's the exciting part, right? You're not going to be able to eliminate all resident issues, but maybe we'd have a better opportunity to keep the good residents in longer.
No, I love that. And another question I had, along with question for you being, what other differences do you see or realize before you did it and then may realize as you're doing it? The one that I think about, because I've dealt with this over the years, where you come up to a building and a resident will say, hey, I can do handyman work. I can do this. Can I do stuff around here, get a break on rent or pay on the side, stuff like that. Is there any employment opportunities for these residents in addition to the other incentive?
Yeah, so that's an awesome question and kind of a forecast into what we hope will be created eventually, is a community where we can kind of highlight some of these professions and some of these handyman work and painters and whatnot. Now, as a standard, because we are beholden to our investors, most importantly, and the bottom line is we need to create great returns to keep people investing and keep people happy, and us included. And we don't have our residents working on our buildings currently, but we're getting less false calls is what I'll say, right? Like, hey, there's the chain at the toilet needs to be changed. I changed it. No worries, right? Like, we're not getting called out for light bulbs and things like that, which is wonderful, right? It's great to not get called for those little smaller items. But we haven't gotten to a point yet where we've started to say, all right, look, let's take in the inventory of what our people do and what our residents are doing and see how we can employ them throughout the community. It's definitely something on our radar, though. That's awesome.
No, I can see that. And you always have to forecast why you should or why you shouldn't do something. We're all approaching this with great intentions, but, for example, on that topic, if we have our residents doing work, now they're not insured. And, okay, well, we'd love to have you help us, but if they're just fixing a toilet, but they tell us after the fact it really wasn't anything that we engaged them to do. And as you mentioned, you have investors, you have a serious responsibility with investors within a real estate investment trust. With that said, I know you said you syndicated some deals. Did you think, I'm sure you did think about it, but why didn't you put this Roots community within a normal syndication structure in relation to the REIT?
So we were going into this with a focus of really how do we open the investment to everyone? And so from a standpoint of what we were looking to do and to build, the most important piece of it was to give access. Coming from that, real estate space, like the retail space where we were helping people buy and sell homes, always the number one question for us was to, hey, well, this is great. I want to buy my next real estate investment 6 months from now or a year from now. And as we all know, that's a challenge, right? It's a challenge to get that first property under your belt with the 20% down and all the other, things that are in your way. And so when looking at it, we just wanted to make this REIT and this investment as simplified as possible and as accessible as possible. And so that's kind of why we chose the structure that we did, and going in after the Reg A filing with the SEC versus just like a Reg D fund.
Awesome. And kind of tying into that, you're mentioning, it's very difficult for many people to get home ownership or become a real estate investor in the grand scheme of things. I think it's well over 95% of people have never owned an investment property. And I saw that you feel like municipalities and banks have created this, what you said, a moat around real estate. Can you explain that a little further?
Yeah, so it's interesting when you look, and I'm from Atlanta, so we've kind of seen a lot of change over the last 15 years. I'm sure a lot of the other cities have as well. So from a municipality standpoint, it's always interesting to me when you have a new mayor, and this is almost, it's every 4 years or so in Atlanta, and they go up there and they say, hey, you know what, we're going to put our foot down and there's no more gentrification in Atlanta. And that's a great thing. Wonderful. Everybody stands up there, applauds, and they don't actually ever put any kind of structure in place to help these people that had paid off their homes to stay in them, or to help their next generation stay in them. And so what I mean by that is, to me, there's a lot of talk about helping people from a municipality standpoint and not a lot of action, right? Like they don't have to raise the taxes on someone who's been there for 50 years, right? They could say, hey, when there's new sales, we'll raise taxes. We don't have to assess the value every single time. And I'm not a politician or make the laws or anything like that, but I've seen our neighborhoods kind of transition based on the fact that the people who are in these buildings who have been there for 60, 70 years can't pay the new assessed value taxes on the building. And then when you take that into, oh, okay, so why don't you go get a loan on your building? Well, that'd be great, but I can't get underwritten as a repairman for my, what is now valued as a $400,000 home, but I bought for $50,000, or my grandmother bought for $50,000. So you end up with your cash in these situations tied into an asset that you can't get them out unless you do that one-time sale, which is great, right? You make your money off that one time, but your grandmother and people in your family have been working really hard to give you that asset and control of that asset. So, I mean, there's a lot to dive into there, but I think from a standpoint of your cash locked in a lot of these places, right? And so that's kind of what I meant by that.
Okay. Yeah, and politicians, they love to stand up there and get that headline, but no action. I think we've seen and heard this before, and I really appreciate what you're doing with Roots, because it is super innovative and inspiring. And seeing that Atlanta has recognized you for one of the 40 under 40 inspiring innovators. Tell us how that came about and how the community found out about this and how it came about to be that 40 under 40.
Yeah, so it's an award that's given out each year in Atlanta, and somebody submitted me and the concept into the contest or the process, and turned out we made it past that first round. I think there was kind of 500 or so applicants, and we made it to the top 40, and we will see, I think, in the next couple of days or so if we made it to the top 10. But we're very excited about the program. We're very excited about the idea of someone being able to live in the home, take care of the home, and build wealth side by side with all the other investors. And so far so good, great results, and we're excited for the learning opportunities that will come in the next 6 months as we really start to market out the fund. As I said, we've been around for 18 months. We didn't get SEC approval though until about 14 months into it, because that's a daunting process. And so I would say in the 18 months we've raised a little bit over $9.8 million at this point, and 90% of that is from accredited investors, right? And so we are excited for this next 6 months of actually marketing out the fund and giving everybody the opportunity to come in. So
very impressive. Almost $10 million of accredited investors investing in this model. I'm curious, knowing that it's a REIT, and I've been syndicating for the last several years where we have that exemption, the 506B or 506C exemption. What kind of questions did you get? Because you raised $10 million through this model. The questions that you got based on how the residents, have the ability to accumulate wealth through this process. And it's only been a short period of time. What type of questions do you get from your investors, and how do you underwrite this type of model?
Yeah, so the the first question we always get is, rent to own. I'm like, well, actually, it's a little bit different. We are, own while you rent. And so from a capitalistic standpoint, basically a lot of the questions surround, like, where does the rebate come from? Where does, I get it. We want to help people, but where's the benefit? And there's a huge benefit, and that is that we are seeing, and we believe, and our investors have as well, that the partner in the property, being the resident, who stays longer, who takes better care of the property and creates less turnover and vacancy for us, is going to create a substantially better return down the line as we continue to grow. And the other piece is, our first year in business, we had, the fund was up 18%. And so, when we did talk to people, and we're talking to people now based on historic returns, would you take 18% and the ability to know that that's helping the person who lives in your home build wealth? Most people are excited about it, right? Some people say, well, I'd rather go chase the 25, and that's totally fine too.
Well, it's hard to find that 25. 18% is certainly a very, very acceptable return. So when the investors are getting their distributions, are the residents getting their distribution at the same time?
Yes. So the residents are treated exactly like any other investors in the fund. They get the distribution. It's usually not large, right? It's a percentage of the ownership of the fund, but it is something. And from a standpoint of our residents' mentality and confidence going through life, it's been pretty cool to watch, right? The messages we get when we provide them with a statement balance that has their true balance, their investment portfolios open to them. They're a part of something, right? And for a lot of these folks, as you probably know, we have 64-year-old women who have never even thought about owning a piece of property in their lives now getting to partake in this, asset class that they didn't see themselves in. And so it's really, really cool. We've got some great videos and testimonials on our website people can check out. But it's the feeling of, helping to, in a different way, right? It's not home ownership where you have the deed and you can do everything you want to the property, but it is home ownership in that you own a piece of land and a piece of, multiple properties. So it's been really cool. We look forward to building on that feeling and building on that resident program to, take it to the next level as we grow too. So.
No, that's great. We've been giving out gift cards and different things at the holiday time for residents for many, many years.
That's
and
awesome.
There'll be that, the small percentage of people that are over the top thankful, where I'm like, whoa, I'm like, geez, I appreciate that. I gave you a $20 gift card. So I'm just like, but, some people are just so appreciative of any type of a thanks. Tell us a story about one of the residents when they get that distribution based on their investment, just how thankful they are for this opportunity.
Yeah. So, it's, I'll start it this way, right? So when we originally bring someone into one of our buildings, the first conversation's always, I'm going to be honest, a little rocky, right? Because the tenant-landlord relationship has been so one-sided, I'll say, for their whole lives, right? And so most of them, have been renting 30 years. You tell them about a new program that you're going to be able to rent and build wealth while you live here. And 90% of them are like, yeah, whatever, man. Sure thing. We'll believe it when we see it kind of deal. And, the good thing is we don't ask them to put any more capital up than they would renting another building, right? So it's an easy, we have to ease into these relationships in that we have to garner some trust, right? There's not a lot of it going in. And so we've got a good little program of basically, hey, you know what, if you want to give it a shot, if it's of interest to you, let's do it. And most of them are like, all right, yeah, absolutely, whatever. What do I have to lose, right? And then the first quarter comes around where we ask them, to do a quick video of their room or of their unit, and they do the video, they submit it, and we send them a message immediately saying, hey, awesome, you've got another $150 rebated into your wealth building account, and also your distribution checks in the mail. And usually it's just like, oh, wow, this is when it becomes real, right? Oh, wow, now I'm actually seeing growth. Now I'm seeing that if I just pay my rent on time and I do this video and I just kind of be a good neighbor, I'm going to get extra capital into that account. It starts to get very real and very exciting. And it only happens that way if you are constantly helping to, make it out front for them, right? If you're doing things in the background, which I'm sure, and that's the thing too, is a lot of property managers are doing great things and they are and owners are trying to help their residents. But I think sometimes they do it in the background as well. And it's not as much in the forefront of that resident's mind as a relationship in which they can contribute as well. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, what I found over the years, because everyone's so different, where, some people, if you try to do too much, especially earlier in my career, I felt like a lot of times you're taken advantage of. But with other people, that same approach, it's somebody differently, you get a different result. So I was left early in my career where I'm like, okay, I just have to treat everybody very, very similarly and be consistent, because you don't know exactly how people are going to react to different ways of whether you can help or not help. And I'm assuming, that it spreads. The word spreads, where if you have multifamily buildings or building and somebody is getting, their distribution check on a Saturday morning, they're talking to their neighbor saying, "Hey, I got mine. Did you get yours?" And then you get that type of a snowball effect.
Yeah, you're nailing it. It's very the mindset shift of like after living with us for 6 months for people who have done the full program is remarkable, right? All of a sudden, it goes from my rental to my property, and the examples that we're getting videos, and people are texting. They were texting us on the 6th, like, "Hey, I am getting my rent in. I'm so sorry. I have it. I have it. Please, don't mark me as late rent. I am here. I have it." And I've never had that before, right? I usually have to text you on the 8th and say, "Hey guys, what are we doing?" And then, it's like, "Oh, well, I'll be paid on Friday." In this circumstance, we're seeing people actually being like, "No, I have the money. It's coming in right now." And it's been cool. It's really neat to watch that mentality shift, right? Because all the economic stuff we can predict, right? We can kind of number out and pencil out what we think less turnover and less vacancy means for the fund. What we can't pencil out is what that emotional and confidence driver is for that resident, and how much and what else do they do to be a part of it, right? Hey, I cleaned up the trash on the way into the unit. It was on the street. I didn't want this looking junky today, right? And we get that all the time. It's like, "Oh, yeah, we don't need you to cut the yard. Don't worry about it. It's part of your lease. Don't worry. It was just getting a little long," And I'm like, "All right, that's fantastic." The pride of ownership and pride of being a part of something is what's cool to watch.
Did you just say residents were picking up trash on your property?
It's happening. It's happening, and it's their property too. So that's why it's happening.
It's funny. I say that because I've had some property. You have your portfolio, and I've always purchased in good locations. I've really focused on that over the years. But you're always going to have your best properties, and the properties that aren't as good at the bottom, and everything in between. And the way I've explained it to staff along the way is, it doesn't matter if it's our least desirable property or our best property. The residents handle garbage and trash the same way. They kind of hit and run. Some are better than others, but as far as just like stray litter and different things like that, nobody wants to touch garbage.
Nope. No,
so getting into the residents with all of that, and I know that they're getting distribution checks. How do they invest in this fund, and can they continue investing as they come up with some money, saying, "Wow, I've gotten distribution so far, and I want to continue to invest here"?
Yeah, absolutely. So their initial investment is done. We don't take security deposits. We would take what's maybe equivalent of that deposit, and that's their first investment into the fund. So from day one, they're invested the first month's rent, call it $1,000, into the fund. And that fund, that builds over time as they take care of the property. We have a residential rebate that comes out of their rent. So if their rent's $1,000, each quarter that they do the program, pay rent on time, do the video, and basically be a good neighbor, they're going to get a rebate at the end of the quarter into that wealth building account. That wealth building account is liened against the condition of the home at the time they move out. So it's a partnership in it throughout, right? It's a partnership that says, "Hey, we're all going to take care of this property together. We're doing our job. You do your jobs. And at the end, 3 years from now, you're going to move out. You're going to have way more money than your original deposit. And you can take that capital and go maybe apply it to another rental or your move, or leave it in, right? We just had a situation where someone moved out. They moved in, their initial deposit was $1,200. They had racked up, I think they were at like $2,300. And they were moving to Virginia, and they said, "You know what? We only need like $1,500. Can we leave the rest?" I said, absolutely. Why not? Like, leave the rest. And now you're still an owner, but you're moved to Virginia. And their objective is to continually add to that incrementally over time. And so the cool thing we have about our platform is you can kind of cost average real estate similar to how you would a stock if you wanted to. So we have the ability to log in, do your initial investment, and then set, $100 a month if you wanted to, just to trickle in over time. I'll tell you, our residents haven't taken advantage of that, and mostly because they don't have an extra $100 usually at the end of the month to invest. And so the resident program is focused on, you don't have to do anything other than help us, then do what you were going to do, which is pay the rent, and then you do a video and take care of a few things that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise. But from our traditional investors, our $100,000, $1,000 investors who come in, they really love the idea usually of being able to say, I like $100 going into this each month, right? And so we have that set up through the platform.
Absolutely. And I think it's so much easier for them, or can be so much easier for them to, they have a personal relationship with you where they're able to set up that extra $100 a month where they wouldn't do that otherwise. That, they don't have a personal relationship, pick up the phone to some financial advisor or whatever, that intimidation factor, or just that firewall of just doing that, where you make it so much easier for them just to make a call and say, hey, Daniel, I'd like to set up where I'm going to put in an extra $100 a month. And there's such a huge benefit to that. And seeing how, some people move out of state or out of the area, so they can't live in your apartment anymore. But it's great that they continue to invest with you. Do you have some residents who have verbalized where, they want to buy a home, but they almost see that it's not such a necessity living in your apartment because they feel like they have their home?
Yeah, so we see it both. There's two paths that we've seen where that kind of comes into play, which is residents, and we've had some residents say, you know what, I'm ready to move up, right? I'm ready to move, but I'm loving the situation I'm in right now, and I don't see an opportunity in Atlanta to go buy where I have, they're not going to have more than 5% to put down at this point, right? And usually. And so, yes, it's a nice stepping stone. And that's what we've told them is, hey, when you are ready to purchase, let us know, right? There's a couple options. One is you might be able to buy the place that you're in, right? Like down the line, if your goal is home ownership, maybe we can give you the opportunity in the single family space to buy the place that you're in and figure out a way to make it work. What we didn't want to do is, when you look at these rent to own scenarios, if they work, it's amazing, but their conversion rates are under 10% right now overall on the market. And so when you've had somebody in there and they've been paying into their down payment account with that entity, and all of a sudden 2 years later, they still can't be underwritten for the home, you end up with that person just losing that capital that they had. And, so we didn't want that to happen. We wanted to give them instant gratification, instant ownership. And, yes, in 5 years, maybe they are ready, but maybe they take their time, because the understanding of all the full 100% liability, full 100% responsibility for all the maintenance and repairs, all of that happens with home ownership can be challenging if you've put 5% down and don't have that nest egg to really battle. As you know, the first year, something's going to happen. That we own properties, something's happening that first year that's unexpected, and that usually could put you in a real hole. So from the resident side, there's that. And what we're seeing a lot of now, because we've opened the channel and opened up the investment fund for everyone, is we're getting a lot of people who are very capable of buying homes. They are making over $100,000 a year, but they live in these really nice apartment rentals in downtown Atlanta or in LA. And they are like, you know what? We love it here. We couldn't find the equivalent of this anywhere that we wanted to live, but this gives me the opportunity to own while I rent, even though we're not the owner of their place. Does that make sense? So we're seeing a lot of those types of folks who are like, hey, I'm putting my $5,000 here, versus putting it down on a new place. So
They're getting the benefit of home ownership. That's fantastic. Where a lot of people, that's why they get into certain townhomes or condominiums where they want to have that home ownership, but not have to worry about cutting the grass or cleaning the halls or dealing with some of that maintenance.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
noticed how you're doing impact investing. And how many other investors in your area have come up to you, asked you what you're doing, felt like it was intriguing on something that they might want to experiment with?
So we've had quite a few property owners who are not looking to sell their homes, but looking to potentially pull the model in to their different buildings. And so that's something that we're definitely trying to help people with. And to us, it's not necessarily like competing if someone does that. We would love for everybody to offer this opportunity or some sort of opportunity to their residents to be able to take care of the homes and stuff like that. And so we've had a lot of conversations from that impact space, and then we've had a lot of conversations with the majority of our investors. Like I said, they care about the returns absolutely, but if they made they would take 16% versus 18% to help to know that that's going to a positive impact piece, right? And I think a lot of people who are invested with us like that it's not a handout necessarily, right? We're not just giving capital back for no reason. We are having partners in those buildings who are earning the ability to be, building wealth with us side by side. So,
well, it's a two-way street. You're offering a great incentive with a return on their security deposit. Let's be real, where you don't get that in a normal landlord-tenant situation. And I wonder, last question before we get into these outros, I can just picture myself in these communities because I've been a property owner so long, where you have your community and your tenants are getting distributions on their security deposit. But, yes, they are obligated to take care of the property, pay their rent on time, and feel like they have that benefit of home ownership. What are the neighbors saying that are owned by another owner, where they're seeing, geez, you're picking up garbage, you're mowing the grass. Why do you do that? Where the other people are in that traditional rental property, and why should I help the landlord? He just wants his rent.
Right. And, it's this like vicious cycle too that you notice, right? You move somebody in at $1,000 or whatever, $1,200, the second they spill one item on your carpet, it's over, right? If I even thought I was getting my deposit back, it's gone, right? Like the deposit's gone. Now it's a free for all. And, it creates this environment where you're like, gosh, you're living in a place knowing I already spent that money, right? And that creates huge turn costs. That's where you get stuck. And so that's the environment we did. We were trying to kind of reconstruct that relationship. And I don't blame the resident, right? I don't blame that person who's never gotten their deposit back for thinking that, right? Like, oh, all right, it's done. I mean, I wouldn't personally take it out on the property, but I do you can see how that would escalate quickly.
No, without a doubt. And I think the nature of the business, we look at it from a tenant standpoint. There's 2 or 3% of tenants that really ruin it for everybody else. But also on the landlord side, we've heard plenty of stories where there isn't really a lot of damages or items left after someone moves out, but the landlord just takes all their security deposit. So there's two sides to every story, and
Absolutely,
it's probably that within 5% on both sides that really make this a sticking point between the landlord tenant relationships.
Yeah, I will say I think we set the record about 3 months ago. We had a gentleman move out, and it cost us $200 to clean the unit, and it was perfect.
Well, that's what we like to say. Yeah, we like tenants to be motivated when they're moving out. They're motivated to get their security back. We've had a healthy relationship. We're moving someone in very, very quickly after someone moves out. So it's on the landlord side, we want the tenant to leave in a great condition, happily give them all their security deposit back because we got business to attend to on the next tenant. We're not interested or have the time to clean up a mess from the last tenant.
Yeah, got to avoid that.
Daniel, this is the Collecting Real Estate podcast. They say you have to have 3 of something to make a collection. So we have 3 questions for you. Number 1, in 5 words or less, what's the most important thing you've learned since collecting real estate?
People generate your profits.
And that is true. What would we be without our tenants, or in other words, our people renting our apartments? Number 2, what are your 1 to 2 year personal goals?
Right now, my personal goals and business goals are so mixed and aligned. It's really to, I don't know my 1 to 2, but my 5-year goal is to help 1 million people grow wealth through our platform.
Fantastic. That's a fantastic goal, and that's going to help a lot of people. Last question for you. How can we and the listeners assist you? How do we contact you?
Yeah, it's Daniel at investwithroots.com. And that's our website as well, Invest with Roots. And I'll throw out there, would love to talk to anybody who's interested in possibly incorporating this type of model. Would love to just kind of hear people's thoughts. We are always trying to learn. And, I've listened to a few of y'all's episodes and I already learned a lot. So I'm definitely going to be a new frequent listener as well. But yeah, I'm open to conversations. Would love to partner with people in any capacity. So definitely reach out if you're interested in hearing more or have other opportunities in the Atlanta or Southeast region.
No, Daniel, I love the idea. It's very innovative, certainly very, very inspiring. You know that prospective tenants are going to be attracted to something like this because there's several different benefits that we've discussed here. So I appreciate you being on and doing this for your residents, and I'm very, very interested on how it goes, over that test of time. But thanks again for being on the Collecting Real Estate podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. We really appreciate it.
We'll stay in touch.
All right.